Wrestling is probably the most physical sport the UIL has to offer. And today we take a look back at this past season for wrestling in McKinney ISD. Hello and welcome to Sports Talk. I'm Tyler Sloan. Bruce Blackman had a young team as well as the challenge of facing perhaps the top wrestling district in the state this year with McKinney. The Lions coach is here to talk about why the future is bright for the program in addition to their regional qualifier this year. McKinney North's Sean Brasher has a lot to be proud of this season. 7 of his wrestlers qualified for the state championships. He'll tell us all about the exciting tournament in just a little while. Finally, David Clayton of Boyd will join us to speak about the accomplishments of his entire squad, especially the second ever state champion wrestler from Boyd. It's all going down next on Sports Talk. We're now going to start off the show by being joined by Bruce Blackman, the head coach of the McKinney Lions wrestling team. And Coach, thanks so much for being here, first of all.
My pleasure.
You're in one of those tough districts, the way wrestling has worked. You know, the previous year in the UIL, they had everyone compete within, one classification. Now there's 2 classifications. You have the 5A and 4A. How did that really change your preparation for events and scheduling?
Well, it really didn't have a big impact on us in 5A, where we are here in North Texas. We had Boyd and the 3 Plano schools were always in our district. Allen was always in our district from before. So it didn't change a whole lot. Arguably, I think we're the toughest district in the state of Texas, and you get from there, you're in the Region 2 now, and arguably, again, I think that's the toughest region in the state of Texas. Allen's been 3-4 time state champions now, and they're just rebuilding, so you just got to get a mindset, and that's where you're at, and that's what you got to go for.
Unlike most of the other sport programs from McKinney High School that were just now this year jumping up to play the Allen and the Plano schools, your team had that experience from the previous year of competing with those kids. How did that help them to know what their competition was like this year?
Well, I mean, it was like it has been since I got here 11 years ago. We knew those were the schools that we had to beat, and they were the best competition, some of the best competition in the state of Texas, and we just looked at it and said, doesn't matter where you face them, you're going to have to face these guys someplace if you want to go to the state tournament. So, go in there with a good mindset, and I think we did.
It was always going to be tough for you to get some qualifiers to go on just to the regional portion because your district is so stacked, but you did get Layden Lyle, a sophomore, through to the regional qualifying. How proud of you are of Layden?
Layden's, got a lot of talent. He's the last of 4 brothers. I wish we had about a dozen more. They all wrestled for me. They all did a real good job. Technique-wise, Layden's a pretty good wrestler. He's just got to, he's about 6'2", 180 pounds. He needs to grow into that, and I'd like to see him, put on some weight in the off-season and maybe come back a little bit heavier and definitely stronger. So I think that'll help him a lot.
What was kind of the meet like there in the district meet to qualify for regionals? Was he in a bunch of close matches? Was he in, sort of easy goings to get to that region?
In our district, there aren't any easy weight classes. Some are a little easier than others, but no, he was in a tough weight class. He showed up and, took care of business and did what he had to do. He didn't win the district, but he placed in the top 4, and that's the goal, and go on to the next round.
As a coach during these wrestling matches, it really helps the wrestlers when they're out there on the mat for you to be right there in their ear, trying to help them with what they need to do to try and get those points and to try and get the pin to get the win. As a coach, what are the most important things you try to emphasize during a match?
It's just letting them know to do what they know how to do. We go over the same things in practice over and over again, and one of the biggest things I preach is that first initial takedown. If you get that, that's sets the tone for the whole match, gets you in the lead and going. And, that's one of the things I preach, and I yell at them and tell them every day in practice and at every meet. When we're done, they come off the mat, that's what we talk about, what they did right, what they did wrong, and what we need to do to improve.
Overall, who on your team really impressed you this year that you thought maybe didn't have as good of a year or weren't going to have as good of a year as they end up having?
Well, I had 3 seniors. They all did a good job for me. I'm going to miss them. I only have 1 junior, Austin Malcolm. He should do well for me next year. His problem is he didn't come out for wrestling till this year, so he's going to be a senior with only a year experience. I have a good sophomore and freshman class. Andrew Corona is one of my freshmen. He came up through our kids program, did a real good job for me. Again, he's one of those that needs to put on some muscle mass and will do fine. I have a couple lighter kids, Anthony Bertucci, Chasen Halford. Those are down the lower weights and freshmen and sophomores, and they're working hard, and they're going to camps this summer and doing some off-season wrestling, so I expect big things from them.
This is a sport unlike football and basketball, for instance, that have the middle school programs and kids have been playing on the teams for a while. Wrestling is a sport where a lot of your players end up their first year wrestling is when they're in high school on your team.
Yeah, we're working on trying to get a middle school program. I came from Iowa, where you start wrestling up there. It's not football down here, but it's almost as close. You start wrestling in first grade at the very least. A lot of kids in kindergarten, even below that. But I just try to get the kids out and tell them they're going to take some knocks that first year or two. But I said they're going to be in the same place that 70-80% of the kids in Texas coming out as freshman wrestlers are going to be. So we try to get them as much experience as we can. JV tournaments, all that. But sometimes they got to step up into varsity, and it's a baptism of fire. So
it sure is. You were mentioning to me earlier that wrestling is really good preparation for life, because even though it's a team sport, all the matches are individual, and it's really, if you're going to be dedicated and put in the time, you're going to see the results, and if you don't, you're not going to see those results.
Yeah, and I tell them 2 things will make you a better wrestler. One is just mat time, and the other is just getting stronger, and it becomes real apparent who did all the preparation. Occasionally you have upsets here and there, but 90% of the time, the kid that works the hardest, that prepares for the match, that does the off season, the practice time, that sort of thing, is the one that's going to get his hand raised at the end of the match. And you're out there, you can't hide behind a teammate or anything else. It's you, or you get all the glory, but you also get all the bad side of that too. So,
who do you foresee as being the real leaders of this team for next year's squad?
Well, I think Layden Lyle should be. He's kind of a quiet leader, but he leads by example, which is good. I have another sophomore, Anthony Bertucci. He's a real hard worker in the weight room. He kind of leads everything off there. So, those 2 guys. My 1 senior for next year, Austin Malcolm. I expect him to step up and, kind of lead the way. And I'm not opposed to new kids coming in, so we'll see what happens and go from there.
Coach Blackman, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
For the McKinney Lions, that had Layden Lyle qualify for the regionals. A lot of young wrestlers on this team that are just gaining some experience, gaining some size as well as they grow into their own bodies, and so it's going to be a good year next year for McKinney Lions.